I don't know why I lost that. Alirza, can you hear me? Alirza, enjoy.
Yes, I'm here.
Can you please admit all? Somehow I can't admit the audience, so we can start.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Why I lost that? Alirza, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here, and I just click on that. All. Okay. Anything else?
Perfect. Let's just get a couple of minutes so everyone join, and then we'll start. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Payman from Parse Ecology Center. Thank you so much for joining to the second session joint event of Netflix and Parse Ecology Center on Job Search Training Program. We are honored and privileged to host Kamyar Mohager, Engineering Manager at Netflix, and Saeid Mirzaei, Senior Software Engineer at Netflix, for this session, which is going to be a career conversation about the STEM. Tonight it's gonna be a casual conversation with Kamyar Jan and Saeid Jan. So first, Kamyar and Saeid will going to introduce themselves, and then of course we are going to have some time for a Q&A. You can both raise your hand, ask your question yourself, or you can just write it in a chat box and we can ask the question for you. Without any further ado, Kamyar Jan, Saeid Jan, thank you again. I know how busy you guys are. Thank you so much for dedicating your time to be here tonight. And we are listening. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Saeid Jan, do you want to start?
I can. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Saeid. I'm a software engineer at Netflix. Tonight, we're going to talk about our career path with Kamyar to see if it can be any of use for anyone who is looking for jobs in STEM. So I would start with my bio and also career path, and then I would give it to Kamyar, and at the end, we will talk about Netflix a little bit more. Yeah, I'm a senior software engineer at Netflix. So here I'm going to talk about how I started my whole career, about each step, and how I moved from one step to another step. What were my choices? What were my decisions? So we can see how it worked for me. So for a start, I started with a bachelor's degree in computer science in University of Tehran. During my college years, I did some internships, and I was also doing some freelance web developments like everyone else to get some pocket money. So in Iran, for whoever has grown up in Iran, from your bachelor degree moving forward, you don't have that many options. So for me, it wasn't like, okay, I was making plans for 10 years, 20 years later. I had to choose between military service or graduate studies. So it was really easy for me. And being at University of Tehran, I was exposed to a big group of people who were thinking about studying abroad. So again, I was lucky enough to be in the right crowd. So that was basically my transition to the next step, which was a master's degree in computer science in Florida Atlantic University. So I applied, I got an admission, and I was a research assistant. So my project was an indoor localization application. So basically, we were working on a project called Campus 2020. And one small part of Campus 2020 was localization inside the campus and also the buildings. So what I made was a localization service, which was working inside the buildings. And I also made Android applications for it. I was doing delocalization and also navigation between the buildings or inside the buildings. So that was my master years. And here I had two options for moving to the next step. So one is a PhD program, which I had an admission for, or moving to the industry. So here I decided to move to the industry because I decided to stay in the country. So I needed more control because as a grad student, basically your advisor makes a lot of big decisions for you. And I didn't like that. And I wanted to start my immigration process. So I started to look for jobs, the interview process, and I started with a company here in Redwood City called Genapsys. Genapsys is working on a very cool project, which is basically making a DNA sequencer, which is affordable. The price is much less than the other options that already exist in the industry. I was at Genapsys for, I think, a year and a half, a little bit more than a year. It was a very interesting environment. It was an early stage startup, maybe 35 people, 20, 25 engineers. And I got to work with a lot of engineers from other fields, like biologists, chemists, mechanical engineers. And it was interesting to see how they look at software engineering as a science. So it was very interesting for me. And then I had to make another decision. So I had to choose between my personal goal, which was growing in my career, and also moving with my immigration. And so I started to talk about immigration, and I figured out, okay, I have a better chance if I move to a bigger company. So again, the interview process, I interviewed with many companies and I got a few offers, and I ended up with a company named Zusk, which is an online dating company. Recently, they got acquired with a German company, but yeah, they accepted to start my immigration immediately, which was a very big motivation for me. So I joined the payments team. During my, I think, 3 years at Zusk, we had one huge data center migration, which as an engineer, it gives you a lot of exposure to. So it was a very good experience, which I could use it later on for my interviews with bigger companies, specifically Netflix. And I saw some failures. So during 3 years, we had 2 rounds of layoffs, which I got lucky and I stayed at the company and my immigration moved forward. I also saw failures because the company was trying to come up with new apps and they were failing because of different reasons, but it was really good for me to observe. And I was also exposed to like company politics, like how people move around in teams, how titles work. So during those years, I also got an admission for a program which is called Stanford Ignite, which is basically a mini course for learning how to bring an idea from zero to a business. So you will get exposed to finance, how to work with a team, how to create a team, how to pitch an idea to investors. And I also started to grow a bigger network. And I also had some financial goals for myself. So that gave me motivation to start the process of changing jobs again. And again, interviews with a lot of companies, and I ended up with Netflix. What was really attractive for me to join Netflix was the culture at Netflix. So, because when I was interviewing, the recruiters asked me to take a look at the Netflix culture demo. I read it, I really liked it. And during the past almost 3 years that I've been at Netflix, the scale of the work has really taught me a lot. The quality of engineering and my teammates has been really interesting. And I think the next step for me here is to grow as an engineer and also as a person. So this is what I've done so far. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do at Netflix, what my team basically does at Netflix. I'm going to state the problem, then I say what my team does for it. Netflix, I'm assuming everyone knows what Netflix is. So imagine a piece of media, like one episode of Stranger Things, or a movie like The Irishman, comes out of the camera, or Netflix studios, or maybe other studios. And we have to take that piece of media and we have to stream it for many people. There are many variables here. Netflix works in more than 190 countries. It means different standards. It means different internet speeds. And also it means different devices. I think Netflix covers more than 1,600 devices. It can be like different phones, different TVs, laptops, browsers. And as I said, different internet speeds. So we cannot take that piece of media out of the camera and stream it on an old Android phone with a low internet speed and stream the same thing on a 4K Dolby Vision TV in Bay Area. Basically, we have to do some transformation on the video, audio, and also the text because we have different languages. So this is the problem. And for solving this problem, we have a team, we call them Encoding Technology. So basically they say, okay, we get this piece of media, we want to transform it to another format. And sometimes for one stream, from one stream, we make up to 200 different streams. And how we do the transformation is the Encoding Technology team. Those are experts on media transformation algorithms. And we want them to focus on this transformation and algorithm. So what Media Cloud Engineering does is we provide a platform for them that they can write their algorithms without being worried about the scale of these jobs, because media transformation is computationally very heavy and complicated. So we really don't want them to think about scale or orchestration or storage or safety or many other components. So this is the goal for our team, to provide a platform for media processing workflows. We need to have very efficient compute. You have to have secure storage. And one of the projects that I'm working on is the new generation of this platform. And our main goal is basically developer productivity. We want our encoding technology team to just focus on writing codes in a descriptive language. We have even created a language for them and not worry about anything else. So this is the new platform we are working on. And our organization, I think we are around 80 people, and we are all software engineers. I think we work in 6 different teams. Yeah, I think this is basically who I am and what I do, and I would just pass it to Kamyar.
Thank you, Saeid. So I'm Kamyar Mohager. I am an engineering manager at Netflix on the messaging team. And much like Saeid, I can talk about a little bit more of my career path, how I got to Netflix and how I became a manager. And I think you'll find it interesting because we both are Persians. We came from different backgrounds, of course. I was born in America, so I didn't have some of the immigration things to go through, but I think Saeid and I both are the same in that we have career goals, and I think all of you do too. So I can talk a little bit about that first. Saeid, if you don't mind switching to the next slide, please. Thank you. I also studied computer science a few years ago, actually many years ago now. I look at the date 2004, and I realize how old I am now. But I graduated in 2004 in university in Colorado. And I've spent the first several years as an engineer. I worked on a lot of different products. I actually started out working in the mortgage industry in Denver. This was before the housing crisis, so it was booming, and so was the software industry to support it. And I had this dream, like a lot of maybe Persians outside of California do, to move to LA. I wanted to be, in that environment and around other Persians, and so I moved to California, to Los Angeles, to work at MySpace. So for those that remember, MySpace was the social network. And that was a great experience for me because I got to get a taste of working on a product that's used by millions of people. And I think that got me kind of hooked to working on products that reach a lot of, big market, big audience. From that point on, I tried to navigate my career a little bit to work at companies that had a big reach, that could impact, hopefully positively, society and a lot of people. So I was there for a few years, and then for those that are old enough to remember, people stopped using MySpace, and with it came a bunch of layoffs. So that was also a good experience for me. I was part of the big layoffs in 2009, but luckily the industry was still strong for software engineers, so I picked up a job right away. And fast forward to 2012, I made the move to the Bay Area. I think that was critical in a positive way for me because it opened the door to so many opportunities. As all of you know, the Bay Area, of course, is home to so many companies. And of course, this is pre-COVID, so there wasn't really a lot of remote opportunities back then. So being physically in Bay Area made a lot of sense. I landed at LinkedIn, which is a fantastic company. I was working on their developer platform. So you can think of companies outside of LinkedIn wanting to integrate with LinkedIn to use LinkedIn's data to do all sorts of things: hiring, marketing, selling. And so I helped build out their platform. And it was also at LinkedIn where I made the switch to engineering manager. And that was in 2015. And that was really kind of came from a desire to kind of, instead of focusing on my contributions in code as an individual, where I build solutions or collaborate with other engineers to build a large system, which was very satisfying. At some point, I decided I want to help other engineers be successful. And sort of there's a kind of a cliche these days with managers, but they say you can scale yourself with your team. And so that's what was kind of driving me to LinkedIn. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to switch over to engineering management with a support system to help me out. And then from there, I had a short stint at Lyft for about a year or so, building out a couple engineering teams. And then in 2017, for very similar reasons that Saeid had, I got attracted to Netflix, and I was very fortunate to get a job managing their messaging engineering team, which I can talk a little about in the next slide. But essentially, what the messaging engineering team is responsible for are all of the notification and message experiences that you get on Netflix. So you can imagine, let's say you are watching Stranger Things, or rather you download it on your iPhone, but maybe you haven't got around to watching it. So you might actually get a proactive nudge from Netflix via push notification to say, hey, Kamyar, you downloaded Stranger Things, but you haven't watched it yet. So that could be one example of a notification that Netflix sends. Maybe others, especially in the group tonight, you might already be subscribed to some of these. The screenshots here are examples of what some of them look like. They could be email form, they could be push notifications, they could even be alerts in the application itself. So if you were going to go on to the, let's say, Android app, the streaming app, you might see an alert pop up. And it might be related to your account information. So messaging really is very diverse in terms of the customer experiences that we provide. So what my teams specifically do for messaging is we're more on the foundation of messaging, meaning we build the platform that is used to process, schedule, and send billions of messages every month to our customers. And we also, part of my team also is responsible for a recommendation system, which is really interesting. We rely on machine learning to select the best message for a given customer on a daily basis. So the hope there is we can really select messages that are engaging for you, for a customer, that they're going to find value out of. And then, of course, we don't spam them either. So we're also relying on that same technology to limit the amount of messages we send, so that if there's a nice balance between getting enough messages from Netflix while at the same time making sure that the content that goes into the message is relevant, and best case scenario as a customer, you will get value out of it. You'll discover new movies to watch, you'll discover new shows to watch, and hopefully it'll keep you engaged and happy with your service. And so right now, the team, I have 10 engineers on the team, and they range from backend engineers to full stack. And I even have some, what I call product engineers, those that do a lot of A/B testing and that sort of thing, which happy to dive into during the Q&A. But yeah, that's basically it in terms of my career growth and what I'm currently doing today at Netflix. Before we dive into the career conversations with the rest of the group, we just wanted to highlight a little bit about what career growth specifically means at Netflix. Saeid kind of hinted at it a little bit, but the culture at Netflix is very unique. And as a result, the career growth that you would get at Netflix looks a little different than it does at a traditional engineering company or a traditional company in general. I'll hand it over to Saeid, who can talk a little bit about what that career growth looks like for an engineer, for an individual contributor, and I can talk a little about what it looks like in leadership as a manager.
Yeah. So yes, at Netflix we have a flat structure. Flat structured orgs. What it means is, if you look at the career website at Netflix, all the openings, they are all senior software engineer. So when I joined, I think I had 5 or 6 years of experience, and my coworkers, they were ranging from 7, 8 to 20 years of experience. And the title for all of us is senior software engineer. So that has a lot of benefits, and it really works with my personality, and we can dive into it later on in the Q&A. But one might ask, okay, so what is career growth at Netflix? So the answer to that is my manager knows how much my value is in the market. And Netflix makes sure that I get paid at the top of my personal market. I think Kamyar can explain as a manager how that works. But for me, financially, it's very clear. Even if I'm not happy with the financials, so every year in October, basically when we re-evaluate everything, my manager asks us to interview. That's pretty unique. He tells me, okay, interview, get the numbers, know your personal market, and we do our studies, and then we can come up with numbers. And it has worked pretty well for me. But other than the a financial view of it, I think I'm growing as an engineer and also as a person here because of the very unique culture at Netflix. So if you just Google Netflix culture memo, you will find it. It's very interesting. You can take a look, but we have the summary here. So I'll go through this summary and I explain what it means to me as an engineer. So the first one says, we encourage independent decision making. So we basically call that freedom and responsibility. As an engineer, I'm leading a few projects. And those projects for my specific team, from requirement all the way to pushing it to production, I make all the decisions. And it can be really costly for the company, but the part of culture is to let the employees make decisions. So for me, this has been great. It has boosted my confidence as an engineer and as a person. I've practiced decision making, and at the same time, I know if I make a decision, I really have to have good reasons for it because I'm responsible for it. So that has helped me a lot. And the second one is we share information openly, broadly, and deliberately. So it is very interesting. When you're an employee at Netflix, you basically have access to everything. From the stuff that I don't need to, like I can look at the contracts of actors at Netflix, which I don't need to, but all the way to all the design documents from my team or other teams. If I have any questions, everything is basically there. And also, I think this item talks about diversity and inclusion at Netflix too. There is basically nothing that stops you from being innovative or stops you from your career growth. Everything is there for you. We are extra ordinarily candid with each other. So that one is very interesting. So we basically don't wait for like every 6 months or yearly reviews to give feedback to our coworkers or manager or whoever we want at the company. We basically do it on daily basis. And we are extremely honest. Basically, I never make a sandwich when I want to give a feedback to my colleagues. I wouldn't say, okay, you are a very good engineer, but this is bad, and something positive after that. We always go directly to the point that we want to make, and it has been working great for me because what I hear from my colleagues, I know it's extremely honest, and I try to think about my feedbacks that I give to my colleagues too. So it really makes you grow as an engineer because the feedback you get, people have thought about it. So it really helps you. The fourth one, I think it's famous about Netflix. We keep only our highly effective people. I think we call it an A team. Basically, it's about the quality of the engineers that you work with. And so far, it has been amazing. I really enjoy working with my team because everyone is experienced and I'm learning a lot from them. And the last one is we avoid rules. We basically don't have any rules. It might be connected to the first one. We make decisions ourselves. We don't have any limitations on what we want to do, what we need to make our work environment better, or even before COVID, when I traveled for conferences, there was no guideline for me. Basically, everything is my judgment. I have to think about my my company goals and my personal goals and make a decision. So I'll come up with the rules. So this is how my career growth is at Netflix and how the culture has helped me. So Kamyar, if you want to
Yeah,
cover
that's
the, yeah.
yeah, and I think I want to repeat some of what you said from my perspective for an individual, because I have the wonderful privilege of managing stunning engineers on my team, and when I look at their career growth, as Saeid said, it's different than what you'd find at a lot of traditional companies where they have pretty structured hierarchy, in terms of their titles, and with the title comes certain compensation. With certain title also comes more responsibility. At Netflix, because of that flat structure, what I get to do as a manager is I can focus more time to make sure that the individuals on my team are aligned with the right projects that are going to both bring impact to Netflix and also bring impact to themselves to help them grow, so that they can expand. They could be exposed to new problems. They could be exposed to working with different, stakeholders and different departments within the company that generally you wouldn't maybe have that opportunity if you were at a more traditional company with a lot of hierarchy. So I think for me as a manager, it's very rewarding because I see how the people on my team can flourish because they have that all of the freedom and the responsibility, of course, that comes with it at Netflix to pursue the areas that they think is going to be impactful for the business. So generally speaking, if you give that freedom to somebody to say, here's the context of the problem we're solving, go and solve it. Go find out how we do it, how to solve it. That I think Saeid even said it gives the people confidence, right? It gives them enough confidence to say, wow, like my manager, my company, they back me up. I'm going to go and pursue this. And there isn't a kind of this tops down approach of like the manager telling them what to do. They have that freedom to figure out how to solve the problem. Excuse me. And that really gives them career growth. So I love that a lot. I won't go through the culture points because I think Saeid brought up good points regarding each bullet, but I will say from a manager's perspective in terms of career growth, it's a little different. We don't have necessarily as flat of a structure. It's much more flat in engineering than I'd say at most traditional tech companies. But it's not completely flat. So we have manager, we have director, and then vice president in the product engineering functions and most engineering functions. But because it's relatively flat, that means each manager can actually take on a lot in terms of scope. So I feel very grateful that I'm able to manage teams that work on a lot of different things, from machine learned recommendation systems all the way to systems that process messages, and even tooling that allow people to compose messages together. My teams do all of that. So that's something that I think I wouldn't be able to do if I was at a more traditional company that was structured. So let's see, I'm just doing a time check here. I think we can probably go on all night, but Saeid and I probably want to take a pause, and hopefully this has given everyone some context in terms of what we do individually, and also like at Netflix, and then also how we sort of got to our careers, where we are today. But we would love to kind of open it up to the room to see, are there any questions that you have about how we individually have grown our careers, or maybe even just more generally speaking, if there's any kind of topics that any of you want to discuss, and we can hopefully have a very organic, informal conversation amongst ourselves.
I guess you're muted.
Oh, Pavan John, I think you're muted.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Kamyar John. Thank you so much, Saeid. It was a very thorough and comprehensive presentation about the culture of work at Netflix and a company like Netflix. دوستان همون شکلی که کامیار جان گفتن, the forum is open. You can ask your questions yourself. You can unmute yourself and ask question in Farsi or in English, or you can write down your questions into the chat box and I can read it for you. So we're gonna try to have a very organic casual conversation and to benefit from the presence of Saeid and Kamyar John. Please ask questions.
Hi, my name is Roxy, and I want to thank you all for making this possible. I have a question for both Kamyar and Saeid John. I want to know how you got in. Like how did you apply for the job? How was the interview? Like, did you know people in the company before applying, or was it just a website you applied? And the process of how getting there.
So do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I can take that one first. So specifically for Netflix, I told you about the Stanford Ignite program. So one of my current teammates, she also joined the Ignite program, and she basically introduced me to my current manager. So it was through networking. So that was how I got introduced to my manager. And after that, it was the standard interview process. So a phone call with my manager to see if there is a match. And after that, I interviewed with the team members. So I think at Netflix, team by team is different, but in our org, we basically interview with the team members. So they get the feeling of who is going to be added to the team. So I think because Netflix only hires senior software engineers, I'm talking about software engineering here, because Netflix only hires seniors, most of the questions in the interview process are related to design compared to like algorithms and data structure. And after 5 rounds of on-site interview, I had 3 rounds of interviews with our team's director and another director from another team, and also director of HR, which was mostly a culture match. So it was a long process, but it was pretty standard.
And then for me, I was an engineering manager at Lyft at the time. We were living in San Jose, and I was commuting to San Francisco every day. So don't ask me why I decided to do that, but I did, and I did it for about 1.5 years, and I was getting towards the end of my patience doing that. Around the same time, I had a friend who was working on the data platform team at the time at Netflix, and he'd been there for many years. And I think we got together, and he could tell I was stressed out, and I asked him how Netflix was, and he would always rave about it. And I said, you know what, maybe I should apply. So I actually didn't get sourced. I went on the career page, and there was there was this position for messaging engineering. It sounded really interesting, and I actually applied. Now, this friend of mine put a referral in for me, so that definitely helps, right, when you get a referral. But from there, kind of the rest is history. I went through the interview process, and that was a really good experience, just because it gave me an insight that the culture that they talk about in the memo is real. Like it isn't just a document that they put on the website. So that was kind of eye-opening. I would say as a hiring manager, just really quickly, I look at both. I look at people who both apply. We also look at people who get sourced. Sourced meaning that there's a recruiter that works with me, and they go out on LinkedIn or whatever, and they try to find people. And to Saeed's point, every team handles their hiring individually, which is nice. And this is beyond engineering. Every team, whether it's in finance or business development or product or engineering, the hiring manager is responsible for deciding how to outreach candidates and how to interview them. And so I think that's good, because otherwise it might be a little too generic when you interview at like at other companies. Like Saeed said, when you're interviewing, you're actually meeting usually either with your teammates or the partners that you're going to be working with.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have actually a question in the same line. I'm eager to know, what is a match really mean? Because I feel like the expectation is you're completely doing exactly the same thing in your current company, and you're supposed to completely come and grow that particular things. You might be very experienced with different realms of different kind of work, and you might be very talented, but I have the feeling that they never give you the chance if your job is not exactly in line with what the current expectations are. Is that right?
You know, I don't think I could say make a blanket statement in terms of like every team and how they hire. Hiring is difficult. I'll tell you, like from my perspective, it's not easy. And in fact, I always think we and when I say we, I'm talking about any hiring manager, we could do a better job of finding people. Right. Sometimes you get kind of stuck in a certain pattern of types of candidates that you look for, and it doesn't diversify the team. It doesn't bring new ideas to the team. And sometimes new ideas, new perspective come from these, maybe unconventional backgrounds, or maybe people that didn't quite have the exact background that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, there are certain things that each hiring manager absolutely needs, right? In engineering, it might be certain technical abilities, and business development, it might be certain experiences with partnerships. But I think, without going into like speaking on behalf of other managers, I'll tell you, at least for me, I am always trying to find out ways in which I could source people from different backgrounds and maybe unconventional experiences, because I really do believe it like brings different chemistry to a team, and you might be able to solve problems differently than say hiring, let's say, everybody from Google, right? Like that's probably not the best way to build your team, because you're only going to get like cookie cutter type of candidates coming through. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, I mean, it does, but it still, I feel like still the match is you want it. I mean, I understand that you were saying that having a different background helps, but my experience is mostly I see that they want an exact match, meaning that your previous title or previous role should be completely in line with the current role. So even though you're a software engineer, but with a different experience, it's not satisfying the current manager's need. That's my feeling. Maybe from the outside, that might not be true.
I think it really, I haven't been a hiring manager before, but I think the matching process, for me, actually, what I did at my previous company was not software engineering and distributed systems. I was doing payments, so it was different. But when I had a phone call with my manager, I think at that moment, what he was looking for, he basically wanted to invest in an engineer. So I got lucky, and there was not exactly a match, but he could afford to invest. But sometimes maybe Kamyar specifically looks for a position to fill in, and there is like no room for, So yeah, I see what Majid is saying. It makes sense, but you cannot always make a rule that this is how we match or not match.
yeah, it's so hard to find somebody that's a match, actually. Like I'll tell you again, from a hiring manager's perspective, it's very seldom it exists that you find somebody who has the exact experience. In fact, of the 10 people I have on my team, not a single one had messaging experience prior to joining. None of them ever worked on systems that had any notifications. And even myself, I never even worked in notifications before. I worked in a different part of software engineering. I was, like I think I mentioned, I was doing developer platforms. So it was much more about building APIs for other companies to use. Very different discipline, very different product experience. So even in my case too, I was not coming in with a match in terms of like engineering manager for messaging. So again, I think at the end of the day, like I hear you, Majid. Like I've been in that boat too with other application process, but I think in Netflix's case anyway, it really depends on the hiring manager. But yeah.
Thank you. And also I have to appreciate your presentation as well. I mean, I didn't point it out.
Thank you. maybe I'll ask a question if anyone wants to answer to get things going. Are there, I assume we assume there's probably people from different stages of their career. Some might be very senior, others might be recently out of school, or maybe even moved here from Iran recently. Are there anyone would like to share like a challenge of what they're going through right now with their career growth, especially given we're COVID and we're all remote? Has it been different for anybody in terms of moving around in their career and growing? We can talk about that too. I think there was something in the chat as well for this session. Oh, Payman John, I'll let you answer that. I don't know if this was recorded or not, but.
Yes, it's getting recorded and it's gonna getting published on YouTube and then in our Telegram channels, YouTube and etc. Yes.
Thank you.
So your question is about just the career growth or changing the career within the COVID time?
It could be both. I mean, I think changing career is career growth if you align it a certain way, right? Certainly Saeid and I had changes in jobs and I think we kind of moved up generally because of it. But you know, we could talk about that if someone has anything that they'd like to share.
So I guess that applies to me. I was fortunate enough to change my job in the, I don't know, 2 months ago. So I moved from Los Angeles, I moved to San Francisco for a startup company that I was working here, and I absolutely hate the Bay Area. I think this is not really a place for me. So I wanted to come back to the Southern California. But the problem is, as much as the Southern California is nice, but there are not that many attractive like technical things going on there. And so I was fortunate enough to, again, be able to change my job. Right now, I switched to Apple and San Diego office. So that's a very great news to be back in the Southern California.
Congratulations.
It's a very difficult process because of the COVID, because everything is more extensive than the normal times. The interviews, for instance, the on-site interview for me happened in 2 full days, meaning 14 hours. So it was it was an interesting process.
Thank you.
Hi there. I also have something to share and also ask a question. I did a career change before the pandemic. I'm coming from a civil engineering background and living in the Bay Area because I've met a lot of software engineers. I became interested, so I decided to do this. Went to this coding bootcamp in SF and graduated back in January. And I only had 2 months before the COVID and the pandemic. So it really hit my job search, and I've been trying hard. I've been building things. I've been trying with these algorithm data structure problems, preparing for the interviews, but I'm not getting enough interviews, and it's very hard for me to have a feedback for myself, knowing if I'm not doing good enough or maybe it's just a bad market. So I appreciate if you could share any advice for people like me coming from non-traditional backgrounds, and especially in this market. I appreciate that.
Kamyar, if you want, I can comment on it, then I can.
Please.
Yeah, so Arash, I know actually many people who are trying to land their first job in tech, specifically in software engineering or data science, let's say. It has been very hard. There are, I think one of the reasons is there were some layoffs in the beginning. So people with more experience were in the pool. So companies were trying to hire those more experienced people. And at the same time, in the time of uncertainty, I think there is no hiring. I know many companies, they had hiring freezes, like LinkedIn. So I think it's a very special time. And I would tell you, the interview process, specifically in the beginning, the first 1 or 2 jobs, it's it's not an easy process. You have to be patient, and you have to be ready for a window to get opened, because a lot of time you have to be really lucky. There is an opening, it is your match, and it's your good day, your interview is good, and you get the job. So it will be an emotional process sometimes, but you have to just keep moving forward and not get disappointed or frustrated. There is a lot of luck in the process.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I think that's really true. It's easy for like us to say when we have a job, right? But I've been through it, namely, like I said, in my space in 2009. It wasn't COVID, but that recession was hit a lot of companies hard, and I think Saeid said it perfectly. You just have to keep pushing and keep applying and put yourself out there, and that's what I did. And luckily, after a few months, I was able to land another job. Of course, this time around, I think in 2020, it is a different ball game entirely. I would say I myself have not done this really, but finding network groups to network with, before it would be very much like an in-person meetup. Obviously, they're not doing that right now, but there's plenty of virtual meetups that are still going on that I see, advertised all the time. And they could be in specific domains. They could be like, Python developers, or they could be internationalization, or they could be, product managers. Those are really great resources to try to get yourself into, because if at the very least, actually tonight is a great example, right? Like we're getting to talk to each other, and you see a name to a face, and it really goes a long way. So I think finding those opportunities to attend these types of events, it really does go a long way. It puts yourself at that much of a more of an advantage versus somebody who didn't do anything at all, and all they did was click apply. So I think I'll repeat what Saeid said. It's an emotional process during this time. There's a lot of uncertainty, but anything you can do to hustle and try to get an advantage, I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I haven't given up because I've never ever enjoyed studying and working in my life. It's really amazing. So I decided to give it my everything, and I hope things get better in the new year. Thank you.
Yes, hope so.
Arash, also to add another point, I believe for most of the companies, Q1 is the best time for hiring. So if you really get ready, be technically ready, be ready for interviews, I think February and March are amazing for hiring. There is always this spike in the hiring. So that would be the window to just...
The Q1 for different companies are different. I'm assuming this is the Netflix period of time, right?
You're right. What I'm talking about is basically the beginning of
the year,
the financial year for each company, because that's when they do planning, people get headcounts. Yeah, good point.
So I did see a question come through the chat from Bita. Bita, if you don't mind, I'll just paraphrase your question, but basically the question was around how much COVID has impacted companies and how they interview. And then you mentioned that you had a few interviews in March and that most teams weren't comfortable with the interview process. I'll tell you that as a hiring manager, that's true. In the beginning, I think we weren't used to it. My entire interview panel had always been in person. We would do a phone screen for an individual, a couple of phone screens. They would talk to me on the phone, then they would talk to an engineer on my team that was more technical, and then they would also talk to a recruiter. And if that went well, we would actually invite them to the Netflix office for 2 full days, basically, of multiple interviews. So all of a sudden, this COVID thing happened, and we kind of had to scramble to adjust. So I think the first few interviews were not that great for candidates, and it was like little hiccups, right? We weren't using the tools properly, or maybe the virtual conferencing wasn't working. But I think I would definitely Netflix has really improved, and we have a very nice process that's very tight and it works. And I would say that I would most companies are the same at this point. They've been practicing now for 7-8 months. So I think if for any of you, if you do go through the interview process and you had gone in March or April, I think you'll see a big difference because the companies are adjusting, right? The questions they ask, the process, and most of all, most companies I think are very mindful that for candidates, they need to have a good experience, and you don't want to give a candidate a bad experience.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Right. It seems like there is no other questions.
Oh, actually, let me ask the very final question as well. So is there any difference in functionality of the office in Bay Area versus the one in Los Angeles?
Saeid, do you want to, you work with the content folks, so.
Yeah. So I think there is, it was before COVID. So most of the engineers, they were in the Los Gatos office. And we had our content producers in the Los Angeles office. But we had smaller engineering teams there, but the bigger teams, engineering teams, they were all in Los Gatos. But after the pandemic, our team, content engineering, the whole organization, we have committed to remote work. So it really doesn't matter where we are. We can work from wherever.
Yep, I'll second that. I'm actually hiring right now in my team, and people, like we should have in the job description by now that it is remote inclusive. So people can choose to work remotely. And in fact, I have a couple of people on my team who've relocated out of the Bay Area. So it's happening, I think, across many teams. Not all teams, so I don't think we can speak on behalf of all of Netflix, but certainly in product engineering, where Saeid and I both kind of sit in the broader org, it's happened.
To add to what Kamyar said, I think remote work is great because it's another type of inclusion. So for a person like Majid, he really doesn't like to live in the Bay Area. Maybe he has like, I don't know, he doesn't like the culture here or whatever it is. He don't want to not give the same chance. So basically, it's another kind of inclusion. Doesn't matter wherever you are, you can work for this company.
All right, great.